primary purpose and benefit of ET contact?
Well, twofold, in your direction and in our direction. Obviously, the information that we are sharing with all of you can make a huge difference in how you experience your reality. By applying the information we have shared, you can create your lives to be lives of joy, love, creativity, in a much more positive way, full of synchronicity. You can allow yourselves to be more of yourselves, your true selves, aligning with your true vibration and in communication with your higher minds much more clearly. For us, it expands our family, for we get to experience through you more ways that existence has of expressing itself, and thus it expands our understanding of all that creation and existence can be. The idea then is that we get to form new realities together, to explore new ideas together that we may not have or you may not have considered before. So there is an expansion of ability, of awareness, of family, experience, and thus it benefits us both in our direction and in your direction as well, should you choose to apply, should you choose to be open to contact. But that's up to you.
Thank you. One individual says, I really want to be in contact with an ET, and at the same time I feel that unconsciously I have a lot of opposition to it. I have a great fear of being in contact with the wrong energies. How can I let go of this fear, and how can I embrace contact?
Perhaps it will help you to understand, as we have explained, that this is physics. Like vibration to like vibration. Therefore, what you put out is what you get back. If you are afraid of having negative experiences, that is what will probably ensure that you have a negative experience. If you let go of that fear, you will be changing your vibration to a state where it won't be physically possible to have an experience other than that which is reflective of the positive state you have chosen to be in. You cannot have an opposite experience to the vibrational state you choose to be in. You can only have an experience that is the equivalent of that state. So by being excited, being in a positive state, should you suddenly have a negative experience, it won't be because you're in the positive state. It will be because you have left the positive state and changed your vibrational energy to that of fear, thus attracting what it is you do fear. So allow yourself to understand that you're completely in control of that mechanism, and that the fear itself is what increases the probability of having negative experiences. Of course, they won't be with us or beings like us who only operate in positive ways. You'll simply be attracting other things, most likely not even extraterrestrials, that simply operate on a lower frequency. So the idea is to understand that we are giving you an opportunity to experience our vibration in these exchanges. And if you allow yourself to truly experience our vibration and choose to match it, it's not possible for you to have a negative experience.
Thank you. One of my highest excitements and passions is building a landing pad for a scout craft. What diameter does it need to be, and can you provide us with any information on how a landing pad should be constructed? And can small groups that go to that location and potentially experience contact?
Potentially, yes. Of course, it will depend upon the individual vibrations within the group and the collective vibration of the group, and of course, when it would be the appropriate timing for all concerned, not only the group, but for those who might even be aware of the fact that the group might be having open contact. So there are a lot of factors that will determine the probability of the actual contact experience. Nevertheless, landing pads would be best if they are circular, 100 feet in diameter, raised a little bit above the ground if possible, but it doesn't have to be, though it should be something solid. So it can be the idea of what you would call concrete. It can be the idea of what you would call rammed earth. And if you wish to have the platform raised at all, perhaps the idea of about 1 foot to 2 feet at most in thickness, and in a flat open area where there are very few trees around or anything else that would interfere with the landing of the craft, especially anything electronic, electrical, or anything like that, or that the craft itself might interfere with, should it be in close approximation to the idea of some of your electrical technology. So best if left natural in a way. It can't be stone, it can't be concrete, it can't be earth, but must be as flat as you can make it, as solid as you can make it.
Thank you.
Yes.
In the first Contact documentary, representations of the Sasani people depict your eyes as being larger than ours, with enlarged dark pupils and having a similar white area around the iris as humans do.
Yes.
Some artists have depicted the area surrounding your iris as black, not white, and some depict your eyes as solid black with no visible iris. Are there actual variations in your eyes like these in your people, and do your people have different colored irises?
What is being depicted, in many cases when you have a hybrid with all black and no whites around the iris, is a very early version that is closer to the idea of the grays. My people at this point do not have black around the iris. We have white around the iris like you do. The color of our irises can range somewhat. Some of them can be dark, which makes the idea of the entire eye, iris, and pupil look large. But the idea is that most of us have either gray, bluish, sometimes slightly different colors may be in there, very faint and very pale, but most of us you would see having relatively gray or bluish irises around a very large pupil. But the depictions of hybrids such as myself with all black around and no whites around the iris, at this point that is not an accurate depiction.
And they say, the eyes are the window to the soul.
Yeah.
And we've noticed that in the evolution of your eyes, how is that related to the evolution of your consciousness?
Big eyes, more of the soul showing through, if you want to remain poetic. You can use that analogy as a direct correlation to a representation symbolically of the expanded consciousness that we present to you. Now, of course, the idea of our eyes in general being larger is also a holdover from the evolution of the grays transmuting themselves and being in very dark environments where the eyes needed to grow so they could see in dim light, being that they had destroyed their world and a lot of sunlight didn't get through for generations upon generations. So in their mutation from human to gray, over time, their eyes enlarged while they went underground because a lot of their power could not be directed necessarily toward lighting. They had to use it in other ways for survival, and therefore their environment for a long time was relatively dim, and as they mutated themselves, they gave themselves the capacity to absorb less light and see better in the dark. Hence, they grew the eyes a little bit larger to capture more light. And therefore, because we are genetically connected to them, some of the idea of the larger eyes are a holdover, but they're also, as I said, energetically symbolic and representative and reflective of the idea, as you say, eyes being the windows of the soul, that we also exhibit a larger consciousness, more of our soul self, and also have the ability with our eyes to see more clearly beyond the physical into other dimensions.
And do you still have eye movement?
Of course we have an eye movement.
And then since you're telepathic, what is the function of your ears?
Why do you not have ears if you're telepathic? Are there not other sounds in reality? Are there not the sounds of animals and the sounds of the ocean, the sounds of rain and thunder and so on and so forth? Even though our ears may be smaller now than yours in general, there are still many things to hear. And remember, again, of course, we're not necessarily telepathic with every single species we encounter. Therefore, sometimes we need to hear what they are saying in order to understand them in the same way that you speak to each other. So it's not like being telepathic with ourselves in our own society negates the idea that there are still many things we may need to actually physically hear in reality.
Okay, thank you. Will you update us on the precursors on Earth, and particularly how many there are at any given time, the percentage ratio of them being recognized by humans, and how this may correlate to contact?
At any given time, there may be, depending upon the phase that is going on of the hybridization agenda and the acclimatization portion of the agenda, anywhere from, say, 25 to 300 precursors on your planet in different places. Some of them briefly, some of them a little longer. The percentage of humans that at this point may recognize them is only about 3 to 5%. The idea, again, is that, of course, the more often they present themselves and walk past you or are somewhere nearby, the more that humans recognize that there is something different about them, and that percentage increases. It increases the probability of contact because you start recognizing and becoming familiar with the vibration that they are giving off of extraterrestrial energy.
Thank you. What is the purpose of the hybridization program? How are the hybrid children different from us? And are they less emotional than a fully human being?
Well, first of all, not many people on your planet are actually yet fully human. The idea, again, of your evolution is that it will take you closer to being like the hybrid children. They are, in many ways, telepathic as well, but they can speak. They are similar to you in certain ways. Some appear to be more like you. Some appear to be a little less like you. Some might have slightly larger eyes, again, as we have discussed recently. Some of them may not look too much different than you. The idea of the hybridization agenda, as we have explained, is not only for the continuation and perpetuation of the civilization that destroyed itself by creating hybrids that can carry on their culture, since they lost the ability to reproduce. They had to find viable human DNA in order to create hybrids that would continue their society. But also the purpose is to, as we are doing, share information with all of you so that you don't necessarily go down the same path that the Greys went down in their alternate reality that allowed them, as previous humans, to destroy their version of Earth, so that you don't necessarily have to experience that. So it works again in both directions, both for the perpetuation of an extraterrestrial or alternate reality culture, and also for the potential preservation of your own, in helping to give you opportunities to guide yourself in a more positive direction than you might otherwise have gone, since the two histories are very similar. What they did, you are doing, and have done in many ways. They took it farther and destroyed themselves, and by sharing that history and information with you, it is up to you to decide how to use that information so that you don't necessarily go down the same destructive path.
And you said the Yael will be the first to have contact with us?
The Yael will be the first hybrid societies to have contact openly with you. There may be others before that, but the Yael, and of course the children, are the hybrids that look most like you. They are the fifth iteration of the hybrids. We are the third. They are the fifth, and so they are closer in appearance to you, so it will be easier for you, in a sense, to interact with them, being that they are similar enough to you that you won't necessarily fear them.
Okay, and I remember one time you talking about there's sort of different timelines, so that when we interact with them, they may be different ages and not necessarily all one age.
Yes, of course. The children grow at different rates, just as yours do.
But also, don't we tap into them at different ages depending on the purpose of a particular interaction?
Yes, that is done sometimes as well. It It just depends upon what's appropriate for someone to experience in their interaction with a hybrid child as to what age you may meet them at. And ultimately, when they come to your planet and start living among you in the years to come, they will again be whatever age it's appropriate for you to interact with them in.
There's a question about ET healing. Many people have reported having healing experiences with ETs in dream time.
Yeah.
Experiences like having negative energy drained from your body or having advanced technology and mind power used to heal major and minor injuries. Can you elaborate on what is occurring and how this healing is taking place?
It is no different than what we have described about the experience you may have with any healer, including healers in your human society. A healer gives off, whether it be biologically, naturally, or technologically, a frequency that is representative of the healed state. And therefore, if the person is willing to allow their own vibration, their own energy to match that state, they will heal themselves. That's the technique, that's the physics of it. It doesn't matter in what form it comes, nor who it comes from. That's how it works.
Are they actually using technology, or is it just our brains are translating what's occurring into instrumentation or technology?
Can be both. Can be either. It depends upon the extraterrestrial source.
And how far above Bell Rock is your ship currently?
About 9,000 of your miles.
All right, so if the pandemic has extended until March 2021,
So far,
does the eye of the needle extend to that date too? And if not, when does the eye of the needle end, and can we pass through it even if we still have some unresolved issues?
you may bring some issues to still work on the other side of the passage. But again, it's very important to strip away as much as you possibly can to make the passage more smooth, more effortless, more easy for you, so that you don't necessarily have that much to deal with on the other side. And again, even if you strip away a lot of the negativity, there may still be things that are not relevant for you that also need to be let go of during that passage or on the other side to help streamline. So it's not always just about letting go of fear-based or negative beliefs. It's also about letting go of those things that are simply not relevant for you. Now, the idea of the eye of the needle is that it is a passage that allows you to deal with these things, to go within, to find those things that don't work for you, that are not aligned with you, and let them go. So even though your COVID experience is part of the experience of the eye of the needle, the overall passage actually extends all the way to somewhere in 2023. But the idea is that you don't necessarily have to experience similar things to your pandemic in order to still be in the eye of the needle. No one is saying that the eye of the needle has to be something that you always experience in what you would call a negative way, or that negative ideas have to be experienced in it. It's about taking a look at yourselves and really transforming your vibrational energy so that when you do come out the other end of that passage, you really are quite different people, ready to really prepare yourselves for open contact, and all of that applies in terms of the kind of reality you really want to experience. So the eye of the needle really goes all the way into, and maybe almost to the end of, your year of 2023, and there will be many different kinds of events that will occur between now and then. Not only the idea of COVID, but of course that can alleviate at a certain point, and you can still be interacting or experiencing other things that will put you in touch with what you need to be put in touch with to transform yourselves. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the experiences in the eye of the needle will necessarily be something that you would consider negative. But it is a passageway that exists until such time as approximately 2 years before the window of open contact. Because after that time, different things will have to happen in order for you to really be fully prepared for the beginning of the window of contact. but the eye of the needle will generally fade out somewhere about 2 years before the window in 2025.
Thank you.
Yes. There will also be another transformation taking place within how, at that point, we will be able to deliver information to all of you. Because the idea is that in our society and with the first contact specialists, there is an allowance of communicating in a certain way with a society, with a civilization, that is based on the cycle within that civilization that represents a complete transformational cycle based on the timing of that civilization, of the consciousness of that civilization. For your civilization, as we have talked about this in the past, the cycle of your societal transformation is 40 years. You see this mentioned sometimes in a variety of ways within some of your ancient literature, so on and so forth. You know, things like 40 years in the desert, so on and so forth. That's the amount of time it takes for a real complete transformation of human society from one level to another. Therefore, the end of your year of 2023 will be the end of 40 years of us channeling in this way to your civilization. After that, the way in which we deliver information to you will change, because it will be now more keyed and more focused on the idea of really taking the time to prepare you for the beginning of the window of open contact. So there are 3 of your years remaining for the kind of information we're delivering now that gives you the opportunity to change yourselves, to change how you experience your reality, to apply the formula, the instruction manual in your lives in a way that will truly prepare you for the change to come at the end of your year of 2023, to absorb information in a different way from us for the purpose of really strengthening and increasing the probability of open contact for those who wish to align with that end.
You've talked about the COVID pandemic having been extended due to our behavior, having
Choices, yes.
choices, right? So, since our beliefs create our reality, and what we are seeing is actually other versions of reality being seen through a glass wall, how can our behavior be a factor?
Your behavior determines what side of the wall you're actually on. Because remember, action is the language of physical reality. And therefore, if you say you are of a certain frequency, but are not necessarily acting like you're of that frequency, then you may be on the other side of the wall. Plus, it's important to realize that many people, while they may wish to be on one side or the other, aren't necessarily as clear within themselves about what their true beliefs and fears are, that may put them on one side or the other that they may not even realize they're in. So it's very important to be very clear about the idea of your belief systems, what you truly believe, not wish you believe, but truly know to be true for you, and how your actions might align with that. Because sometimes things that may seem to be representative of what you don't prefer may actually be the path of least resistance for you, if you're honest about what you really believe is possible for you to experience when you observe what other people may also be choosing. You have to be really clear that you either are or are not a part of something, are or not in alignment with a consensus belief system. But sometimes just going with the consensus is actually not only the path of least resistance for you, but acts as an example to others to allow them to also be true and in alignment with the path of least resistance for them that may be true for the collective society that you've agreed to be a part of. So you have to have real deep, honest self-examination and investigation as to what's really true for you to really know for certain what side of that glass barrier you're actually on.
And just from a foundational perspective, the side of the glass wall that most of us are at least moving in the direction of through our attention is the idea that how do you think of other people and how your behavior affects other people? Like, what's your foundation?
Yes, because again, the idea is that if you recognize there are people on one side that are part of the consensus reality where a certain behavior would actually be better for them, by countermanding that on your side of the glass wall, because they can still see you, you may be sending them a signal that they don't necessarily have to choose what it is they're choosing on their side, and thus you may be sending them an image that actually would be detrimental for them were they to mimic your behavior on your side. So it's not just about the idea of you, it's about the idea of you still realizing that people can see you through the glass wall just like you can see them, and by taking the actions that are most representative of what is also in best service to them is also part of the idea.
And it's just a basic position of not harming others, correct?
Basically, yes. The idea of doing what is in the best interest of all, and understanding what kind of an example you set for those that may not necessarily be as clear as you are about what it is you prefer to be true, so that you at least give them the best opportunity to get through an experience in a way that you know might actually be of service to them, because you can recognize from your position on one side of the wall what position they have chosen on their side of the wall, and are helping them to choose the path of least resistance that actually works for them. But again, all of this takes a lot of clarity, a lot of discernment about what is appropriate, because sometimes you can give them a different image to encourage them to also perhaps match the frequency on your side of the wall. But at the same time, you have to also know that not many people on your planet are capable of understanding how to do that. Therefore, it's like teaching a child to say, all right, well, this is the behavior that you need to exhibit now because I understand the limits of your belief system, and I will help you with that by being an example of the behavior that you need to exhibit. At the same time, I will encourage you to understand how to change your belief system so that you don't necessarily have to exhibit that particular behavior if it's really not in your best interest ultimately as you mature. So it takes a great deal of maturity and a great deal of discernment to understand how to orchestrate the living example that you choose to be to others, to help them in the best way, to be of service to them in the best way, to allow them to go through the eye of the needle in the most effortless way.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because of parallel realities and the amount of people that believe the virus was man-made, does that also mean that there's a parallel reality where the virus was man-made and then another parallel reality where it was created from the destruction of ecological systems?
And anything in between. Yes, all those parallel realities exist, but this is what we're going to say about that. It doesn't matter. Because the idea, whether or not you want to say that the virus was man-made, or whether the virus is simply an opportunistic organism that was created or at least was unleashed because of the damage done to the environment, what's the difference in terms of human responsibility? None. So the idea is to simply focus on the idea of taking more responsibility for the choices that are made, because whether or not the destruction of your environment unleashed the virus, or whether or not it was man-made and was accidentally or purposely unleashed, matters not when you understand that the bottom line to all of those scenarios is to take responsibility for the idea of the acceleration of the virus, since it is still connected in some way, shape, or form to the choices that humanity has made. Therefore, by taking some responsibility in some way, shape, or form, it doesn't matter what the real origin is. It matters that you understand how to take responsibility and how to make different choices by learning the lessons that you learn by taking responsibility and having a different reality, because you then choose to do things differently than you have done before. No matter what course was taken, it still ends up being the same understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
One individual is saying, I'm confused about the real difference between choosing the reality we want and denying what is. They are paradoxically opposed. For instance, in subjects concerning evil forces on Earth and beyond, how can we really choose what we want without being in denial of what is?
All right, well, first of all, the opposition that you're sensing is because of the terminologies that you're choosing to identify these things with. It's not about what you want. It's about what you need, first of all. And you're not denying the present by preferring a different reality. The only way you can actually experience a preferential reality is not by denying what is, but by using it in the most creative and positive way. That's why it's so important in the formula, in the fourth step, to stay in a positive state, even if what manifests is something you don't prefer. Because only by staying in a positive state will you be capable of getting a benefit from it, of learning a lesson from it, and letting it go away because you've used it up for the purpose it was there. Because you have to know that even if something manifests you don't prefer, it's got to be there for a reason that could serve you. Only by staying in a positive state will you figure out how it can be serving you. By going into a fear-based state and denying what's happening in the present, it can't serve you, and you only get, quote-unquote, stuck in the negative spiral mode, thinking that it doesn't belong there when in fact it does, for some reason. But you get to determine what that reason is, positively or negatively. So it's not about wanting a different reality, although preference can come into it, but preference is a non-judgmental neutral state. It's simply a recognition of what is and isn't vibrationally compatible with you. So drop the wanting, because wanting is often the product of the negative ego, thinking it knows best what the outcome should look like, when it absolutely has no clue whatsoever, most of the time. But if you understand how to focus on getting what you need in life that comes to you will always fulfill you and always propel you in the direction of the preferred reality. So it's about living in the moment, not denying what's happening, and using what's happening to springboard yourself toward the direction of a more positive preferred reality. That's how those two things are connected. But when you say things like wanting and denying, you're creating the dichotomy, you're creating the polarization in the definitions that you're using.
So this idea that you're looking at something through a glass wall, and at the same time you're using what you're seeing through the glass wall to impact your current behavior.
Yes, you're making choices based on what you do and don't prefer, based on what you're seeing others choose.
So where is the line between denial and something else? Because denial would take you out of a higher frequency, right?
Yes, and that's what we're saying. If you're in denial about what's happening, you can't use it to your benefit. Therefore, by not being in denial and accepting that what's happening is happening, again, doesn't mean you endorse it, doesn't mean you condone it, doesn't mean that you're vibrationally compatible with something you don't prefer, but you have to understand that what you're experiencing and what you're observing is there for a reason that can serve you. So it's not about denying what you're seeing, it's about using what you're seeing in a positive way to propel you, by contrast, in a direction that you prefer, that is different than what you're seeing. That's how you use it and propel yourself in the direction of the reality that you prefer, not want.
Okay. Another individual wrote, I've been going into deep meditation, visualizing planet Earth as already healed and present with nature thriving. I've tried to visualize a loving, abundant energy on the planet and a light aura surrounding it. Does this visualization create a speeding up of the vibration, the positive vibration on the planet, and help to heal the planet? Is it purposeful and useful to do this?
Yes, because the idea of being in that state, the state that that kind of visualization puts you in, can make you, if you choose to match that state in your physical actions, will make you a living example, an active, living example to others that they can choose to be in that state too. But the idea is that you have to match what you're visualizing and the energy state that it puts you in with actual physical actions that go along with that, or you're not going to be speaking the language of physical reality to anyone else. They won't see you as a living example if your actions don't match the vibration of your visualization.
Thank you. And our last question is, there are more than 7 billion people on Earth and only a small percentage that are aware of Bashar. Is there anything special that relates to all the people that listen to or know Bashar?
For the most part, with very, very few exceptions, those that find our particular vibration and delivery of information, most likely, it doesn't mean we're the only one, but most likely will have some connection to the hybridization agenda.
Thank you, Bashar. Thank you, Tadeo.